Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. If you haven't already, just hit that subscribe button, that like button, leave us a review. That would be amazing. Today with us, very excited, Kelsey Daingerfield joining us all the way from Houston, Texas, with Virtual Integrator. Some might refer to her as the Pocket COO, the Swiss Army knife, the integrator that you need in your back pocket at all times. Kelsey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's hear a little. I'd love to hear about your story. And I have to say, I was telling you offline, integrators are my jam. I absolutely love it. Like I have so much respect for people that can take an idea, really make it happen. They are the true action heroes, the action takers. And I am just I'm a big fan.
Well, thanks. It's been fun. I didn't even know what the word integrator was, I want to say, until maybe 7 years ago. And then I figured it out when I read Rocket Fuel, and I was like, oh, that's me. Oh my gosh. And like I took the little test, and I was like, I felt like such a nerd. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so seen. I feel so heard right now. So
yeah. Well, I think
cool.
it was funny. I was interviewing another gentleman. He was a fractional integrator as well, and he has a pretty wild story. Do you know Steven?
Yep, Steven and I talk. Him and I, yeah, because I saw that he's an integrator. I'm like, hi.
Well, it's funny because he mentioned the same thing. He's like, I always knew what I did. I knew the skill set, but I didn't actually have a word to represent what it was. And he said, as soon as I started reading Gino Wickman's work, I finally was able to put a label on what it was that I did. And the integrator was where that was the badge that I held strong. And so he kind of mentioned the same thing.
Yeah. I used to just say I was the fixer. I'm like, I just get every company I've ever worked for. I just end up getting brought in to fix things. Even if that's not my original intention of my job, I just get brought in to fix things.
Totally.
So, exactly.
And you kind of always were, you kind of knew that about yourself. You had a few traits, but where did things really start to take off for you in a professional sense? What did things look like before Kelsey Daingerfield, the integrator?
Well, I've one of those weird backgrounds. I like to say it's a squiggle, like a squiggly line. So I've worked in a bunch of different industries. I did medical and aerospace manufacturing. Then I went into retail and I managed a Starbucks. Then I went into higher education. From there, I moved into tech consulting in higher ed. But for me, every single job originated with processes, project management, and a little bit of marketing, no matter where I went.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I like to say I'm dinner table certified before I got certified and everything, because my dad has done it his entire life. So I was always it was just normal.
Yeah.
So it started, oh my gosh, I want to say Starbucks really refined it for me because
I was gonna say I had a hint that maybe Starbucks was something that really really sharpened the edges or forced you to really dive into things. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
It did. It was just really interesting. So I was recruited to go through their management training program. And when I got my store, we ended up implementing this new initiative called the Playbook. And it was their approach to like Lean Six Sigma processes, like just getting things organized. And at first I was like, yeah, but that's for manufacturing. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's an assembly line. Everything is an assembly line, no matter where you look, like making a cup of coffee, ringing somebody up, building a house. Everything has a process. Admissions, there's a process. And at Starbucks, my store was one of the ones that piloted it in our area. So my team was able to just go in and pull the store apart and set it up to a flow that worked for us, that made sense. And we brought in a lot of change management practices because I had employees that were about 16 all the way up to about, I want to say 67.
Yeah.
So I had a wide range of employees, and that really just lit the fire under my butt with it. I was like, man, this is fun. Like, it's not as scary because it's like a beautiful dance. Like, it's a choreographed dance at some point because you just get into the flow and you can see how easy it makes things.
Yeah.
If you just do it right and you lean on each other to pick and point out all of the weird nuances. So Starbucks really kind of honed in on that. And then while I was there, we ended up moving originally from the East Coast. So we ended up moving from New Jersey to Michigan. And I ended up getting a job at a university out there doing as an admin, and same thing as administrative assistant. I was like, this is all a process. Like, this all kind of lines up. And I told my boss, I was like, I want my MBA. I want my PMP. I'm doing all these things. Let's just go. And, he was my dragon. He helped support everything. And I just kept taking on fixing projects. So we had a lot of silos at the university, and I was brought in under the corporate side of corporate partnerships. And I started helping break down the barriers between that and admissions, and then between admissions and finance, and helping refine our systems and just ask questions, because I don't know finance. I don't know financial aid. I don't know their systems. But if it feels like something's missing, something's missing.
We need you at City Hall here, like at home builder, right? We deal with and we do a lot of commercial projects, and at City Hall, there's every municipality is very different, but you submit plans, and you're talking to one person, and then it has to be reviewed, and then goes to another person, and at some point, like it kind of resembles an assembly line, but none of them talk to each other.
Yeah.
And nobody knows where things left off, and nobody knows the conversations that were had. There's zero integration of any level of continuity, and it is wildly frustrating.
And it happens to everybody. I think majority of my clients, we all start out with like kind of a strategy session, but then we start out with just how do you guys communicate? Like, do you know what this person does over here? Do you know what they do? And usually it's just like, okay, let's get all the houses together. It's like, bring everybody together. Let's start talking through how we actually do stuff, so then everybody can see a little bit behind the curtain. And that I think that is one of the biggest eye openers for teams, is when you start kind of peeling back the layers and letting everybody see what the true process is.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, that you mentioned Lean Six Sigma, and that's a fairly renowned framework that was developed through using manufacturing, and essentially highlighting deficiencies. How wide are the aisles? Why is it so wide? Why is product over there? John has to walk 30 feet to get the boxes. Can we get the boxes 15 feet and cut that time in half to just make things more efficient?
Yep.
And you referred to it as a dance. Some would say, well, this is like a real soulless thing. Like it's kind of taking the fun and creativity out of a job. But I don't see that at all. I've had people push back on that idea a bit, and I don't know. I love process. I love watching that dance that you're referring to.
And that's what I think that I think you have to pause and think about it. Because for me, it's like, when working with people, it's bringing the soul back into your business. It's bringing the fun. It's bringing the energy. And you don't have to be a robot to have processes. You can make the processes that work for you, work for your business. And you can have your team put their spin on things. It doesn't have to be like step 1, step 2. You can have some humanity in there. And I think that's what's really fun. And I think people can go to the extreme, or they can be like, no, that's too, just whatever the word is, like just, it's too much to follow, too strict. So I think it's how you look at it. It's all about the perspective of it. And then making sure as you're building the processes, and sometimes I won't even use the word process. I'll just say routines, because it's less intimidating. So
that's actually a really good little tweak there. I think that mindset, getting the idea of like, hey, this is the process, follow the process, is just like, no, this is the routine, or this is the company cadence. Like this, we need to make sure we follow. But just using a little bit of a different word that doesn't maybe have as much quote unquote negative weight behind
Yeah.
it, I guess. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And I think if you just simplify it, because I remember talking to my dad after I got all my certs, and I was like, I had a bit of imposter syndrome, and I was like, who am I? Like, I don't have processes. And he's like, stop. He's like, how do you make your coffee? And I was like, well, I pour it into my cup and I put my vital proteins, I put my sugar. And he goes, you know exactly how much? I was like, I know by color. He's like, that's your process.
Yeah.
That's your routine. He's like, what about when you're getting the diaper bag ready for daycare? I was like, well, I do it the night before. And he's like, well, why? And I walked through my steps and I was like, I project manage my own life. I was like, I've created my own repeatable routines without even realizing it. And I think people need to realize stuff they do every day is a routine, just like a process.
It was funny. I mean, the other weekend, I got up and it was a Saturday morning, and I started making my lunch for work and packing my gym bag and like going through the things and doing the routine and like drinking my coffee, and then I realized it's Saturday. I was just full on like in my focus mode, and I had my Tupperware out and I was getting ready to pack everything up, and I had to check, and I was like, okay, I'm just following the process that I'm used to following. And I thought it was funny personally, but anyways, that was a
It is a
little Saturday morning story.
At least you caught yourself before you were like in the car. So.
That's right. That's right. So what do people usually hire a fractional COO first? Like if somebody's calling you and they're saying, Kelsey, I need you, we have a problem. Is there like a 8 times out of 10 it's going to be a problem with a certain thing that they come to you with? Or is it very different things? Is it, hey, we're having trouble with marketing, we have a bottleneck here with leads, or are we having issues with managing change, or structuring the reorg of the company? Somebody's overseeing these responsibilities, but we need to transfer the responsibilities over to somebody else. Mm-hmm. Or is there like something that often comes up that you can walk into and you just know you're being asked to do something that is very common?
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, historically, like with all of my clients, it's been, I want to grow my business. I'm exhausted. I hired all these people, or I'm planning to hire all these people, but I'm still doing everything. And I need to bring somebody in to fix my operations. And that's where does that answer it a little bit? Being like, it's more so people are just feeling that pressure.
It sounds like they're just overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. So they're bringing you in to pull back the layers and just start asking some questions. They're like, hey, this is everything on a plate. I'll give you more information if you ask for it. And then you start just kind of working your magic and uncovering the constraints or the bottlenecks that are in the organization, and just start having conversations about how things are going so that you can pinpoint what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly it. Is its own. So I find I get a lot of people like to just brain dump. Like when we have our calls, like I just have a lot of people who just unload everything of the frustrations in their business, what's going well, where they're struggling, a lot of the personal life too. A lot of the people that I support are, they're either wanting to have a family or they have a young family and they want to grow their business without having to sacrifice time at home with their kids. And that's really my why behind all of it all. But for me,
what do you tell those people? Sorry to interrupt, but what do you tell those people?
You can have your cake and eat it too.
I love it.
You can have your cake and you can eat it too. And I think
that's what I wanted you to say.
Because you can. And that's something that I've been very, like, I have set up very firm boundaries in my business. And people are like, well, you could scale, you could do so much more. And I'm like, but this is my boundaries. I want to be around my kids. My husband travels a lot. This is my bandwidth. And I'm not going to push it because this will be here tomorrow. Yeah. My kids will leave me in 10 years, 18 years, depending on the age. This isn't forever.
Yeah.
So, and I like to, and that's honestly, I've signed clients just based off of them being like, I really just want to get married and have kids. And I'm like, I'll help you. What do you need? and I want, one thing I do like to mention is not everybody needs a fractional COO. Not everybody needs an integrator. Depending on how your business is set up, like I think everybody jumps in to solve the problem by hiring someone to just fix. But sometimes you're actually further along than you thought. You just have to get focused. And you just need that sounding board. You need somebody that can see the chips, that can see your vision and help you just, okay, let's get down the path and let's focus on what we need to do to get where we want to go. All these other things we can chip away at, but we don't have to do everything right now.
Yeah, so often I think people really do know the answers to their questions, but they often look outside and look for third party validation. And when they're told that, they're like, okay, you gave me the same answer that I was thinking, but I still need to ask a few more people just to make sure that I'm making the right decision. When that intuition has just become dull because because you haven't been able to stay focused and make decisions around that one thing. But I think if a lot of people were to go real deep into what it was that they were trying to solve, they probably know the answers, but maybe they're just afraid to look at them or
Make the
really
decision.
analyze it, make the decision, fear of indecision, fear of the outcome, fear of what that process might look like, or yeah, I think a lot of people if they were to scale their business and double their business or 3x their business, they would be in absolute shambles because they have no way of scaling it and actually running that sustainably.
Yeah.
So they're gonna immediately think, if I'm going to be tripling my business or doubling my business, then that means I'm going to have to work double the hours. I'm going to have to work triple the hours, and it's going to just take all this time away from my family. When in fact, that's so often not the case. I think it really comes down to focusing on the right activities.
Yeah.
And the activities that you're used to focusing on for so long, that got you to this point, but it's not necessarily going to get you to that next level.
Yeah. And if you have a team, I have a client right now, they're like, well, we're bringing on this person to help manage our content. And they recommended that we let somebody go. And I was just like, well, why? I'm like, well, it's a cost saving. I'm like, but we have a lot of stuff we need support in. And this person is already a little overwhelmed. Instead of just, saying, okay, like, let's cut it. Why don't we reassess? Like, what else do they like to do? What other interests do they have? Like, and I think that's something that we often look outside to solve problems. Like, I have to hire this person. You may have that person on your team already. And that's one of the things that I do. I do this thing called the blueprint, and it's where we do like an assessment, but then I bring in your team because I like to ask the team questions, and it's either a survey or an actual one-on-one because they're the front line and they're guaranteed half the people that are helping you have other things that they just like to do for fun that you may dread. And they already know you. They know your system. They know your process. They know your team. And all you have to do is just ask. And I think instead of going out, first look in and see, who do I have? And ask those questions.
You find that a lot of business owners are just scared to have those conversations because they feel like would be asking their staff or their employees to just do more work, or they're worried about what they're going to say, and they don't want to put any additional burden on them, so that question never comes up in the first place.
Yeah. Or they even feel guilt for not knowing. Like, oh, I should have known that. Why didn't I know that sooner? And I definitely have had that where it's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, you don't have to feel guilty for not knowing. Like, that's okay.
What is a orientation look like if you're getting the team together? The business owners called you in because they want to solve X. What did those first few days or first interactions look like as the integrator, as a service that you're going to be offering? When you're working with, do you bring in the COO or somebody on the leadership team? Do you go to the the administrative line? Do you sort of circle through everybody? How do you know which feedback you're getting from, sorry, let me rephrase that. How do you know the feedback that you're getting is coming from the correct sources? Where do you go first to find that?
I start with the owner because everything kind of, it's like that. It's systemic. It goes like this. Everything flows down, which is fine because that's how decisions are made. Ideas are fleshed out. But oftentimes there's a communication issue. Maybe the vision isn't being translated. Things get muddied. So I like to understand what the core goal is, what the business is, what they think the challenges are. And then from there, I like to go to like the next leadership level and just talk. And it doesn't have to be like I only go to the executive team first, then it's directors. I don't mind just popping around. And if it's in person, I don't mind just going to the front line. Like in admissions, I was in the corporate side, but then I started helping out the admissions side, and I would just ask questions. And I would just go up and be like, hey, I'm Kelsey. And they're like, hi. I'm like, oh, like I'm just here. I'm learning. Like I work with so-and-so, and I'm like a process nerd, and I'm just trying to understand what you guys do because I don't understand the systems. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just kind of talk me through things, and I'll ask why. Why do you do it like that? They're like, oh, I don't know. That's what I was just told that we always did. Okay, cool. And just have conversations. And for me, I definitely start at the top and then maybe the next level. And then I just pop around where I feel that something is more off. I focus on that area first. So I do tend to lean towards the area that feels like there's some resistance or fogginess around it. But that's kind of my approach. I just kind of ask everybody, and I like to meet everybody. And, depending on the type of company and the role, I'll do the surveys or I'll just do one-on-ones being like, tell me about you. What do you do? What do you like to do? And keep it personal too. So,
do you often find that it's a strictly a process problem, or how often do you come in and you realize this is very much a person problem? This person is not, you may have the process in place, but you don't have the right person owning that role. And there becomes a commitment issue from that person, and that's identified as an issue. Because I think a lot of businesses, maybe not a lot of businesses, maybe I'd be surprised, but I would think a lot of businesses do have a certain level of processes in their business that they want to follow. But a process, if it's not owned, followed up on, reviewed, is just words, right? It isn't really a process. And a lot of the time the process isn't maybe an issue, but it would become a person issue in that case, that they're not upholding what they've committed to, what they've said they're going to be done. They're not staying, and they don't have anybody that's keeping them accountable to actually overseeing that this process is working well, or that it's being followed through on. How often would you say it's people are having a process problem versus a people problem on their team?
I think I would call it people. I think I would probably call it more cultural.
Cultural.
Because you have people that like, they have a process. They may know there's the checklist for, let me think of one of the systems that I'm working with right now. Onboarding a new client for a marketing agency. There's a checklist of like all the things that need to get done. We know relatively well who does what. But if a process was put in place, but we always kind of did it this way. And that's just kind of how we always did it. And like, yeah, we have this, that's like a guide, but like, this is really how we just always did it. And if that's more of the mentality, then it's more cultural. It's okay, how do we start getting people to buy in more? Is it a communication gap? Did we not communicate the reason as to why we're doing this? Did we not involve them in any of this? Like, did I go and make a process for you, but it's your job? I don't do your job, but now I'm going to tell you the checklist for your job. So I find it's more cultural, depending on the size of the business. It's more cultural than it is specific people.
How much of a process is put or as part of the process development is put on a single person versus involving other team members or the whole team? Because if you're a business owner and I'm speaking with you, you've come in and you've identified, hey, this is a process that needs to be fixed. Am I going to go and fix that on my own and roll that out to everybody on the team and say, hey, it's been identified that this is a process? Or are you getting your leadership team together and saying, hey, this has been identified as a issue within the company. I want all of your opinions on it. I want your feedback. And together we develop a process. What avenue typically works best, or what mistakes would people make if they're integrating a new process into an already established team or already established culture?
Not asking the frontline staff their feedback.
Right.
I think that's the biggest one. And my husband's in medical manufacturing, and we talk about this stuff all the time with like assembly of products and processes and following job orders and descriptions and designs. And people will quickly go like, oh, the process is fine, the people aren't doing it. And it's like, or maybe there's a training gap, or maybe this person realized that they can be more efficient in doing something, but they didn't update the process. They just know they're more efficient this way. So I like to bring it to the attention of course, like the leadership team, like, hey, I identified some fuzzy points here. I think we need to kind of go down the line of this process and ask and kind of get a little bit of a group working session together and be like, okay, what do you do next? Okay, then how does he know that you take that over? And then, okay, how does she know? And kind of go through it together as a team, because most of the time you'll be able to see the issues just by asking the team for their feedback. And I want to caution on how many people you bring in, especially from a leadership level, because you can have too many cooks in the kitchen.
That was where I was going with that.
You can have way too many cooks in the kitchen.
You get too many opinions to the point where it becomes inefficient, and then you end that meeting and you're like, I don't even know if this was a problem. Maybe it wasn't, and then just nothing gets done, or nobody ends up owning it.
Yep. And I've gone into, so I'm working with the institution right now where we've been going through that storming phase for a good 2 years. And we are now just starting to leave it. And it got to the point where when I was working with my counterpart at the university, I was like, listen, I'm no longer going to ask for people's permission. I'm going to just tell you best practice, and this is what we're doing. And if somebody pushes back, fine. I was just like, but for the integrity of the school, for the compliance, like, we're going to do this because you hired us to help you. And I think being able to assess, read the room, and know where you can kind of push that is essential, because sometimes they just need somebody to be like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And not be afraid. And I think that's where it's helpful bringing in somebody externally to do things, because then they're Switzerland. Like,
totally,
if you're the owner, like, oh, I'm not the bad guy. Like,
exactly.
oh no, like, this is you. She's the expert. So that's where it helps too.
I find that too, because I do a lot of training with our team, and I build a lot of framework, and anytime I roll out a new, whether it's a process, I just get I get the whiteboard out. We work through something together. We sit there for half a day in the lunchroom, the boardroom. We go through it, and I'm teaching, and that's great. But I know at some point I just become the owner that's talking again, and there's not as much emphasis, as much buy-in, because it's coming from me. It's coming from somebody that they end up talking to all the time. So having another third party in there, and having the owner also just sitting down at the table, being a part of this learning experience together, is really powerful.
Those are really fun too. We had a mapping session for admissions, or it was for the university, and we were trying to get the student's journey. And you could tell it was a lot of people, like, they were kind of getting offended, like, oh, it's not my team, it's your team. And it was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to initiate this conversation. And I was working there at the time. So it was very much similar to yours. Like, okay, I'm just another person. But what we ended up doing is we had a parking lot board for ideas, things that were like, oh, we need to do that. And I would be like, you're in charge of the parking lot today. And it got to the point where they were like, oh, what was his name? Anthony. They're like, Anthony, go put that on the board. And so Anthony would have to get up and put it on the board, and we'd come back from lunch, and I'd hand it to somebody else and be like, you're in charge of the parking lot. And then they would be like, Kelsey, go put that on the board. And like, starting to do that really helped keep people engaged.
Yeah.
So I would definitely, that definitely helped. Or like asking people, as soon as you realize they're in the flow, giving a marker. Like, why don't you go put this on the board?
Yeah.
And
So
if
cool.
you, because you feel like you have some people that have that energy and get like, yeah, yeah, and you're like, here, take the marker, you go do it.
The buy-in from the team is incredibly important if you're going to get anything done. Right?
Exactly.
If you're gonna get anything integrated in a meaningful way. You said you take the marker and they own the parking lot board, and this is just them putting information up on a board as you go through the meeting that somebody needs to write it down. Somebody's accountable for it, and that kind of you rotate through those responsibilities. Is that like the table that you're sitting down with? I guess depending on the size of the company, but is that three people usually? Is it five people? How many people are too many people? How many
Mm.
cooks in the kitchen are too many cooks? And is there like a real right balance of personality that shows up, questions that can be asked, decisions that can be made, creativity that can be had? Is there like a is it 2 to 4 people? Is it 5 to 7 people? Or is it just very, very depending on the situation?
I'd say it's a combo. It's dependent on the situation and it's dependent on what you're trying to do. So, when we were trying to go through refining the admissions department, we had every rep there: high school, adult, international, grad, veteran, all of them. And we use that as a massive brainstorming session of
Right.
everybody writing out like on the board, okay, what's right, what's wrong, what's confused and missing. And we would set like a timer and be like, okay, we're going to go and do all of the what's right. And we have 5 minutes. Tell me what's right. And then, okay. And you just write it all down. And then we go through the process. And then we'd empower the team to go, everybody got stickers, like those little circle ones, and but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go vote. You go vote. And then whatever had the biggest like amounts, we tally them up. That's where the focus went. And then,
Can you go a little more into detail there? Because I think like
yeah,
this is maybe a framework that for people listening, because there was a bit of a light bulb that just went off in my head. And I'm like, I like where this is going. I want to know a little bit more about that. Can we get into a little
yeah.
more detail of what that session might look like?
Yeah. So you start off the session with like, hey, this is the focus. This is the purpose of why we're here. This is our goal. Does anybody have any questions about it? So that you answer all of that and you make sure it's clear what we're trying to do today. And sometimes even writing that down on the board so that when you feel the people kind of spiraling, going down one other pathway, which happens to everybody, you could like, no, 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 no. This is our focus. That idea is great. That's something we need to address. Put it on the parking lot. Here's your marker.
Mm,
And then you go back to that what's right, what's wrong, what's confused and missing based on your topic. And then you do your timer. And that's where, like, if the timer goes off and people's hands are still raised, they're like, you're writing too slow. But it keeps the energy going.
yeah, yeah.
And then so you go through each one. So what's right? What feels right about what we're doing here? What do we like? Awesome. Because you're starting out with the positive. What's wrong? Like what's just not right at all? What do you know is like that's doing no? And then what's confused? What are you unsure about? Like what's the decisions that you kind of get stuck up on? And then what do we know is missing? Most of the time people will say that's like a tech piece. It's, hey, only half of us have laptops and we're traveling reps. That's a missing.
That's something that's real missing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so going through that and then you look at it and you're like, okay, see what you guys just uncovered here and get some feedback. And then like, okay, we're going to take a little break. Then you come back and you have your little stickers ready. And it's like when you go to like Office Depot and you get like the little container of the little multicolored dots that are like an inch big. And, they're like, okay, everybody's going to have 5 dots or however many you want to limit. Pick the 5 things that you think we need to address the most.
Yeah.
And you have 10 minutes or however many minutes, depending on the size of the group. And they put it next to whatever was listed and you tell them not what's right. Great. We're not going to touch that. We're focusing on what's wrong and confused, even missing, depending on how many are there. And then that puts everybody's focus onto those areas. And then you can really see where people are leaning towards. Where do people kind of agree? You see some of the outliers, and that lets everybody else kind of get into the, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was actually a problem. And it just gets more of that buy-in. So you're picking the focus of the things to fix based off of the team's feedback and input. And then you count it up and you do your numbers, and then you're like, okay, and you take pictures of the boards throughout this process. So you have this for when you guys want to go back and say, hey, we did this. Or like, hey guys, we finished all 5 of these. Let's refresh. What was next? And then you're having that trend, those low-hanging fruits are being just chipped away at. And it's everything that the team identified. Not you, not the owner, team.
How often should these types of meetings be reviewed with a team? Like, what would you say? Because is it once a year we can look at problems? Is it as problems arise and you recognize that something needs to change? Should it be a regular process? Should it be a regular cadence or regular routine?
I would say at least annually.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of your projects, you might benefit from doing it a couple times, because if they're quick wins, quick things you guys can fix in a quarter or two, then every 6 months and bring the team back to do another session, like another working session. So 6 months, at least a year. I do like the idea of making sure that you have a 6-month check-in, if not quarterly, being like, hey, January, we did this working session where I made you all sit here with me for 5 hours and we went through this. This is what we've done. These are the team members that are helping out with this. This is what's completed. We're going to be focusing on this for Q2.
I think that's a really important thing to mention, because that was going to be my next question, is the feedback loop. Right. So how often are you checking in? You run through this session, you do this, everybody is excited, they go to work on it, things change. And then you just don't follow up to actually check in and say, hey, what was the progress? I mean, I'm guilty of it.
Everybody is.
That, I think everybody, you run a process like this, you get carried away. Everybody is excited about change and everything is really good for a couple of weeks, but then there's really not a lot of talk about it. Not a lot of like check in or follow up or really any sort of feedback to see how well things are actually improving. And I think this is a really important thing to mention, because these processes, they're very temporary. I think unless you're continually following up so that people can actually see the results of what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
And making sure that it's getting better. And I think for the process itself, right, to check in and say, is the issue that we were working on getting better, because we now have more data of the process that we have put in place as to whether or not it's working properly or not.
And I think looping and keeping, because you're right, you have like that effect. It's like when you go to a conference and everybody is like, it's like you're all in the Kool-Aid. You're all drinking Kool-Aid. You're all excited.
We're here.
You go home and you're like, yeah. And then like a week later, you're like, yeah. And you just kind of lose momentum because you get into your routine again.
Yeah.
I think,
or you get a huge workbook of like, hey, you're all here. You've been here for 4 days, 5 days. You've met some great people here. Just like make sure that you're doing all of these things over the course of the next year and check that off. And here's your empty workbook. And you're like, okay, I'll take that. And then you go back to work and people ask you how the conference was and you say it was great. And then nothing changes. Yeah.
And so I think while doing it quarterly, like, because usually in companies, you have like town halls. I feel like they happen quarterly, maybe once a month, depending. I would say during those town halls is when you bring it up. But then from a management perspective, you put that on your monthly check-in, your biweekly. You make that one of your line items of, hey, how is this going? Like all the way up the chain. So the president can be like, hey, I know these 5 things were identified. You don't have to spend an hour on them, but you can make that as one of your check-ins with your leadership team. Like, hey, I remember that session that we did. How is this project and this one going? That's it. That's all I have to ask. And then that is the buy-in and the support, because it's like you have that top level asking. So that means it's important. So then the next person's going to ask, and the next one. And they're all going to start keeping each other accountable because everybody's paying attention to it. and it goes all the way down the food chain because it matters. And I think just making sure you're building that tiny little routine into your cadence, because you're going to have an agenda, make it a standing agenda item. Doesn't have to be crazy. Like 2 bullet points. That's it.
That's it. Just check in. How are we doing? Here's a scorecard. This is what we've noticed. This is an improvement.
Yeah.
Since the last time we spoke. You don't
Any
have to
roadblocks that we can help you with, like any challenges there, like, and if you're a business where you have brick and mortar and you're actually in person, especially as the manager, I think you taking the time to do the check-in, like, hey, Amanda, I know that you mentioned this, like, how's this going? Because one, they're like, what? And then 2, they're going to tell you. And it just shows like you're just a guy. You're just a person and you're here to help and we're all in this together. So
is there a type of personality that you run up against that would really push back on processors that is really difficult to work with when trying to integrate new process? Because I think, a lot of business owners, maybe they're maybe a bit of a wild personality. Like I'm speaking from experience. In my mind, I'm thinking of a few that I know, and they know that there's a process there that needs to be dealt with, but they feel like they don't want to ask for help, and if they do, maybe they get their back up a bit, and they don't really allow new insight or new creative ideas to come in because they're like, there's this fortress that they built. They're like, no, this is my company. I know best. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to tell me any different. Is there a personality that you come up against that is a really difficult thing, or a CEO that may be a very difficult person for an integrator to come in and work with?
For one, because if you are the integrator, you select who you partner with. That's my one thing that I want to say, because I've worked with people where I'm like, this is awesome, like this is a great opportunity, and I was like, nope, never again. I know my flags, I know what I work with, and I know what I don't work well with. And what I think is, it's not everybody's going to jive, where you may have that person that's like, this is my sandbox, don't come in it. And that's fine. And if it's the owner, that's different. That's a harder thing. That's where you decide if you want to partner. If it's a manager, then you have to adjust your approach, and you just have to slowly chip away at it. And the way that I've been doing at one of the universities I'm supporting right now, there's a couple, because change has been really challenging there. And what we're doing is we're working around the challenges. We're getting the buy-in from the other people, and we're helping them. And we just keep, reaching out. Hey, we know you're trying to upgrade the system from this to this. The system sunsets in December. You were slated for January. Is there anything we can help you with? No, we're fine. Okay, cool. We're here if you need anything. Keep helping the other teams. And then slowly you just start to break down the barrier, because then everybody else is like, man, they were able to get that report system built out and make like a report cube for us. Now I actually can get my data. It's not a spreadsheet. And you just throw them the line. You just slowly wheel them in. Yeah. So it's letting them know you're there, letting them know you just want to help, because that's all it is. You just want to help them, and change can be challenging. So getting buy-in from other people will help slowly break down the barriers. Doesn't mean you're going to solve their problems tomorrow, but at least it starts the process.
Is there an umbrella of processes? Maybe it's communication, maybe it's financial data or financial understanding, maybe it's leadership. Is there a certain umbrella that you find that a lot of companies they don't have proper processes for, that's really causing destruction in the company?
For me, I think it comes down to the communication and the longevity of it. A lot of the people that I get the most resistance from have very, very similar responses of like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And then in like 2 weeks, that person's going to leave. Or in like 2 months, the boss is going to say, no, we're going to do this. And they've been burned too many times trying to make initiatives happen. So I want to say it's the communication and like I don't know if the longevity is the right word to it, but the sticking to it, the sticking to the
Almost back to
focus.
the cultural thing that you were mentioning before, right? It's the like the culture of the company is wrapped up in so many different things, but if there isn't a culture of buy-in, and there isn't a culture of growth, and there isn't a culture of development and accountability,
Hmm.
then any sort of new process that's going to come in, like there's always going to be communication breakdowns. There's
Always.
always going to be, people are going to go head to head with one another or resist change, like you said. And yeah, I think a lot of it would stem from probably the culture. And I don't know that. I mean, you can tell me, is there a process for if you were looking to redefine your culture in a company? And I'm not saying like let's not take, for example, a massive, unless you want to, but a massive company like Meta or Facebook or Uber or Netflix or something like that. But let's talk about the small, the medium sized business owner, the team that maybe has 6 employees, 3 employees, 10 employees, something of that nature. But if you're trying to shift a culture because you know that something is wrong, you're just not enjoying the feedback that you're getting. Everybody's doing okay, but nobody's doing excellent.
Hmm.
And you as the business owner are growing, because I see that a lot, right? So the business owner, he or she decides they're going to put a lot of time and energy into growing themselves, but they're not putting the same kind of time and energy or emphasis on growing their people. So then they start growing and they're wondering why nobody else is growing with them. And then they come to a point where, and I'm saying this because I've heard this story so many times and I've been there, but you start wondering why the culture isn't shaping out to be what you want it to be. And what would you say to somebody that needed to come in and make a shift in their culture? I'm
It's a
putting you
very
I'm
good
putting you
question.
totally on the spot right now.
You are.
But I would love your feedback as an integrator, because I think if you're looking at integrating something as simple as, hey, all of our traveling salespeople need laptops, but only half of them have laptops. Well, the answer is pretty clear. Like, let's go
No.
get them all some laptops and make that happen. But when you're looking to make a real cultural shift and change the way that people have been operating, or the way that people have been seeing things,
Hmm.
to me that's a very it's a very powerful thing, but it's also in a lot of ways a very scary and difficult task, because maybe things have been done that, family run businesses is a good example, because as family has been running the business. Maybe it's the mom and dad, they started the company, the son, the daughter, whatever, has come in, and they're in the business for a few years. They have the mom and dad had started the company 20 years ago, and they have a lot of long outstanding staff. The son or daughter comes in to run the company. Things don't want to change. They want to run the company. They want to shift the whole culture from what it was, because they need to grow, but mom and dad are still very much involved in the company. How does that get integrated? Because I think like it's a softer skill, but
Yeah.
it's really important. How do you shift the culture of a company?
With that, based off of my experience, and I have one particular executive in mind for a business, it was getting to know the people, getting to know just the feel of where that cultural breakdown is taking place. Is it the fear of not speaking up to the person? Is it the fear of saying like no and pushing back on things? Where is that coming from? Where is that disconnect? And I've had it where people were very, very intimidated by their boss. But he was also somebody, he was a very high D, very direct,
Mhm.
just his personality, but you would never know that he is the world's biggest softie, and he's kind, and that he is just a, a beautiful human, because everybody sees this. They see the sales, they see the bull in the china shop, like
Yeah.
let's get it done. So for me, it's bringing human back into it. And for that particular experience, it was finding being the yin to the yang. So I ended up taking it upon myself, recognizing like, they see this, I see this. This is just like the persona of like, let's go get it done. We need people to see this more often, and pushing back, making jokes, reminding them like, he's just a guy, has kids. He puts his pants on in the morning just like you do.
Yeah.
Just a guy. And I know that doesn't cover all situations, but I think like being intimidated by people is something that happens very easily. I know I get intimidated by people, just there's no rhyme or reason. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. You can walk into a room and sometimes
you just feel it.
You're just like, oh, for whatever reason, I'm kind of intimidated. Maybe it's the way they walk, the way they dress, the way they look, but
yeah. So I think that's probably where I would start is how does it feel? Is it people related? Is it the relationships and the understanding and knowing how to work together kind of thing? Is there a feedback loop? And then just kind of go from there. That's usually my original approach, is like, because I have business owners who are highly energetic, full of ideas. They tell you we're going to do this process, and then they forget because they're like 10-second Tom, and like 2 minutes later they forgot that they told you, and they're like, oh, go do this. You need to be able to be confident and comfortable enough to say, no, we're focusing on this. This is the initiative. Unless you want to change it, we need to reprioritize. And I think it's building that skill set and that comfort level within the team too. I hope that answers that. I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah, I know it was a super loaded question. and I know we don't have 4 hours to sit here and really jump into all of it. But yeah, thank you for answering that. I think one of the most powerful things I've done, and you mentioned the high D, which is, for people that aren't familiar with that, we're referring to the DISC assessment or personality assessment, right? So we're talking about personalities that are maybe, very less emotionless, just straightforward. That's how they communicate. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the most powerful things that we were able to do was I had him on the podcast a number of episodes ago, was Dr. Ken Keys, and he started running has a company called CRG, which is similar to the DISC assessment, and they run personality assessments, they have leadership assessments, they have entrepreneurship assessments. It's just like understanding who people are. One of the most powerful things that we did with the company was go over their values assessments and values indicators. So what that does is it shows what everybody values, and you go through, it's 300, and you're answering 350 questions in a series of 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you're making very quick decisions on what you value. And if you say you value a certain thing, like maybe it's wealth or spirituality or praise, then you go through a series of questions, and that will come up again amongst a number of other things. So even though you think maybe that's important, you've shown that actually that isn't as important based on all of these other answers that you've given.
Yep.
As a team sitting around the table, going through that and hearing from everybody some of the values that they were in, and being able to facilitate that process, it gives you a lot of understanding of who you're dealing with. And if somebody that really value, if you're a COO, or you're a high level leadership executive, and you're speaking with one of your project managers, or whoever's sort of on your team that you may be working closely with, if you know that they really value praise, and you're like, why am I not getting as much out of this? Or why is this relationship great? And you're like, yeah, I don't know the last time that I ever showed my appreciation for what he's doing. It's not, or she's doing, and it's not that I don't appreciate that, but I've never been able to portray that to them. And I see that they would really value that. Right. Or
100%.
if it's they say they value honesty, which is a big one. Okay, well, are they living in a relationship, or are they in somewhere in their work environment where projects that they're working on, are they being honest with their customers, or are they being forced to put into a weird position where they're trying to sell something that they don't really believe in? They're not going to do well in that role if their number one thing that they value is honesty, or if you're working with them and they feel like maybe you're hiding something from them, or you're not being forthcoming with all of the information in the way that they're asking for it, they're going to start losing that distrust.
Yep.
And so that was something that we've done in our company a couple of times over the years, is relook at the values, especially as you bring new people onto the team.
Yeah.
It's really helpful just to understand what makes people tick.
That's so true. And thank you for the disc thing. I know I kind of went on like my own little
No,
tangent
it's
at
all
that area,
it's yeah, no, it's all good. Most people,
but
I
you're
think
so
most
right.
people listening to the podcast will know what you're referring to. But I had to mention it because I was going to go on my next thought there on the values indicator.
But it's so true because you have people. I remember there's one woman that we worked with, and she was awesome. And my boss at the time would get a little frustrated. He's like, well, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys speak totally different languages. I was like, you are direct to the point, give it to me in bullet points or like abbreviations. Like, she needs you to hear her. And she wants you to say, like, hey, thank you. And like, you really did a great job with that customer. Or, like, I see what you're doing here. Like, it's like that. You're right. It makes a difference because that immediately shifts their demeanor to like, okay, I'm being seen. I'm being valued for what I'm doing. And you're totally right. Because there's people that everybody has different things that they need.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, they have different goals that they're working towards,
Yeah.
right? And what you as a business owner or a project manager, or in our case a site super or carpenter or laborer or electrician or plumber or whoever's involved, like their goals are going to be not necessarily the same as yours
Mm-hmm.
as a business owner or as an entrepreneur. And so when you start questioning why they're making decisions, or aren't making decisions the way that you would make them, it's like, well, maybe they don't have the same understanding of what you value.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily looking to go where you're looking to go. They're looking to go in their own direction. And this is how they're going to handle it. And that has to be okay as well, as long as there's an understanding.
And that circles right back to the beginning when we were talking about just interviewing people and asking them, getting to know them. Like that matters. Like you said, like they may have a different goal. They may not want to go down the same path as you, which is fine. So what is it that they want to do so that you can show up and support them and also communicate with them the way that they need to pursue whatever their goals are and to make sure that the job that you're asking them to do aligns with their values as well.
The book you mentioned, Rocket Fuel, which we talked about early in our conversation, Gino Wickman's books, or one of many Gino Wickman's books, talks about the power of the integrator and the visionary, and the rocket fuel being what is combined, what is generated when the two of them are very, very much aligned,
Mm-hmm.
and how explosive it can be if they're not, is
True.
is not something that he wrote in the book, but that's kind of what I picked up from it as well. It's like this could be very detrimental if they are not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
If you recognize as a visionary in the company that you didn't have an integrator in your business, and you were looking to hire an integrator, and I'm not saying fractional integration company maybe such as yourself, but if you said, you know what, I need somebody on my team that is going to take my ideas and execute on them, where do you start looking for that person, and how do you know that they're gonna be executing on that? Is there a litmus test for integration? Is it, how fast can you pick up on whether or not they're doing the right things? Because chances are that visionary has really no idea what they're looking for. They probably have an idea, but they don't have a way of testing it because they don't have a process in place for hiring that person or any sort of feedback loop to see if it's working well.
Yeah,
They need to hire that person to start developing that for them.
that's a good point. Honestly, if you don't have a coach and you're a business owner, you should get a coach because I feel like you would start with leaning on the people that you know best
Yeah.
and your leadership team because they know your weaknesses. You know
Yeah.
your weaknesses, but I think making sure that you're doing assessments of yourself and that you're getting that input from a bit like a coach or a couple trusted peers that you work with of like, hey, where do you see my gaps being? Like, what are my pitfalls? Like, I have one client where he just goes. He just has ideas and he's like, ba, 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 ba. And then, but he needs somebody. I don't know if you ever see My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but he needs a neck. And like the
Yeah.
wife talks about being the neck. He needs somebody to just be like, no, 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 we're going to go this way.
Yeah.
And like, and I think you need to know yourself well enough to know where your weak points are so that you can help fill the gaps of those areas. And then for me, with all of my clients from the integrator support to like advising and just being like a high level consultant, I like to say it's a 3-month dating period
Yeah.
because you can't get enough done in 30 days. You're just getting your feet under you. 60 days is fine. 30 days, you can see some progress. And by then you know if you get along because it's a relationship. It's a partnership. It's like a marriage. And you have to make sure that you are able to be very transparent with each other, very honest. You can call each other on your crud, and that you also get along and you understand the vision that they're explaining to you. If you can take what they're explaining to you when they're going off on their tangents and then reiterate it to the team members to where it makes sense, then you know you got something there.
Yeah. And I think the fractional integration option is kind of like a test the waters scenario, right? Get them in, highlight that stuff that maybe you don't know. This is a great place to start. And then once you realize, hey, maybe this is the one of the processes that we don't have is this role that we need to hire for. Maybe we do need like we have a lot of momentum, and maybe we do need somebody full time that's going to monitor, that's going to check in, that's going to build the loop, that's going to be call it a um, you can put any sort of label on it, title, operations manager, whoever, whatever you want. That's going to be following these processes and integrating that. But I think the fractional the fractional COO, the Pocket COO, the Pocket Integrator, is a really awesome tool. And only recently have I found that this role even exists.
And it's just cool because again, like you can customize the expectation of any role. But I find with fractional, like you said, you're just kind of dipping your feet in the water. You may not need a full-time person. You may have a lean team. And I think that's one of the ones that I love working with the most is when you already have a team in place. You have your project managers, you already have an operations person, but you're now becoming the bottleneck to where some of these projects aren't getting taken off because you need somebody to help lead and to help make the decisions for you. And I think that's the beauty of the fractional or just having that like advising support. It's having the sounding board and it's having somebody execute for you because you don't need another coach. If you already have coach for this and this and this, you need somebody to execute and to help push, just make progress.
And I think leadership and charisma and being human, like there's an element there that's not going to be disrupted by AI, where there's a lot of these processes that maybe just need to be fixed, whether it's we just need the CRM system to talk to the finance system to talk to the marketing programs and talks to the newsletter and deploys leads on Instagram, whatever. Like a lot, like AI will handle that, but it's unlikely that you're going to get the same kind of buy-in from an artificial intelligence model and sitting down and watching something on a screen that you are with whiteboarding, getting a marker, getting a team involved, handing people the responsibility, getting engagement. Like that type of thing is far from disruptive, and people want to very much be a part of the experience. And if they want to be a part of a company that's growing, they will really value and cherish the time that's been set aside to do that type of thing.
Yep. And that's stuff you can do virtually too. And that's the thing is like, it doesn't have to always be done in person because I know that's not always possible. It can be done virtually. You have like the digital whiteboards now and like there's so many options out there. So, and AI really, it can help you do so much, but it doesn't have the human aspect still. And the human aspect is the uniqueness of being able to read the room, feel the room, get everybody's body language. Like if you even see people talking like this, or if you see people just talking like this, those are two totally different body languages. And if you can't see me, my hands are down and then I'm pushing down, or my hands are up in the air and I'm lifting it. And it's two totally different body language. And yeah, I can pick up on that. But you can use AI to make those sessions more efficient. You can use AI to read through the notes that you have, to look at the photos that you took from the board and pull that stuff. So there's ways to loop in technology so you can move smoother, faster, and get stuff done, but you still need the humans to actually be the soul of the business.
Facilitate. Yeah, you bet. Is there any last message? Is there anything, any sort of piece of advice that's really sitting on your, in your heart, on your mind, that you want to get out, that you would love to leave with anybody that is in a position that is looking, maybe they're a business owner, maybe they're a CEO, a visionary, maybe they're struggling, maybe they're thriving, maybe they're looking to grow, but you want to leave them with a message if they are really struggling or looking for somebody to integrate what's necessary for them to grow and take these next steps?
For me, it's ask questions. Don't jump to the assumption that you need to hire a full-time integrator, that you need to hire all of these people. Interview, ask the questions, make sure you're figuring out what you actually need. So someone's not going to come in and say, I'll be your integrator right away. It's like, no, let me talk to you, let me assess. And I think that's where people get too caught up in just making the decision because they think the problem will go away.
Yeah.
And I just did a reel on this. You know, when you were little and your parents are like, stop, look, and listen as you go to cross the street.
Yeah, I have a daughter. We were talking about this offline. Yeah. We have daughters very much the same age.
Yeah.
Still, I've been telling her, stop, watch, look both ways before you cross the road. Don't run onto the street without me. And
listen,
yeah,
especially
I've
for
that since she's been able to start walking, and it's like every day.
And you got to look because the hybrid cars you can't hear.
I know.
So for me, I like to start. What I've been saying lately is stop. Look around the business. What's really on fire or just what doesn't feel like it's right? Ask questions and listen to the feedback. Listen to the team. And if it's just you, use AI. I have a little prompt that I'll share with you, but I have a boatload of different prompts that I use with my ChatGPT to help me brain dump when I am just in a mood or I'm feeling inspired, or if I just want to like recap the week or queue up my week. And I leverage the tool to help me get through all of the chaos in my brain and help me prioritize it better, to be like, okay, maybe that really wasn't that bad. And so stop, look, ask questions, and listen.
I love it. Kelsey, thank you so much for spending your afternoon here with me today. It's been so much fun talking to you, and I could go on for another couple of hours. I think what you do is absolutely fascinating and really undervalued. And the fact that like these types of roles, I'm starting to hear more and more about them, is very, very exciting. And I have some people I need to introduce you to because they need your help.
It's just so much fun.
I love it because only an integrator would think that processes and integration of such processes is fun. Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. And to everybody else out there, thank you so much for tuning in today. Until next time, we'll see you. Rock and roll.
Thanks, Brandon. Bye.